English 201, week 4, part 4. Okay, I know it seems like I should be able to keep track of those numbers, but it's a lot of numbers. I can't do it. So on top of page 3, Gregor says how simple everything would be if only somebody came to help him. But he doesn't have any help. And again, this tells you his relationship to his family. Even though his father could help him, his father's not a helpful guy. This poor guy doesn't have any support from his family. He can't count on them. He locks them out of his room every night. And also, they're not going to fucking help him with this. All right, so then the guy from work comes. We talked about this already. And there's a little sentence in sort of the middle of page 3. I'm just right about here, little section. Why did Gregor have to be the only one condemned to work for a company where they immediately became highly suspicious at the slightest shortcoming? Were all employees, every one of them, louts, like lazy, worthless? Were there not one of them who was a faithful and devoted, who would go so mad with pangs of conscience that he couldn't get out of bed if he didn't spend a couple of hours in the morning on company business? Was it really not enough to let one of the trainees make inquiries, assuming inquiries were even necessary? Did the chief clerk have to come himself? Did they have to show the whole innocent family? This was so suspicious that only the chief clerk could be trusted to have the wisdom to investigate it. He can't believe this is how people get treated at their jobs. That, like, when you're just like, he's not even skipping a day. He's just a little late. He is a little late to work, and the boss comes to his house. Now, again, this is incredibly unrealistic. If you were a little late to work, your boss would not come knocking on the door to find out where you are. But companies are very suspicious of their employees. It's one of the reasons COVID got bad, is because if you get sick, especially if you work with other people, like in the restaurant industry or something, if you're sick, you should be able to stay home. But bosses are often so strict with employees, and employees like they're living right on the edge, and they need every paycheck. They can't lose any employment. They can't lose any paychecks. That oftentimes they can't afford to skip work. And people feel like, man, if I call in sick, my boss might not like that and he might fire me, so I'm going to go in anyway. And people go to work sick. And it's one of the ways in which COVID spreads and diseases spread. Not because the person is an asshole for going into work sick, but because we live in a society where it's difficult to call into work because your boss probably doesn't trust you. If you call in and say you're sick, your boss probably thinks you're lying. And even if he doesn't think you're lying, you might be worried that he thinks you're lying. See? And you feel guilty about it. You feel bad. If you had a dream about feeling guilty, your boss might show up at the house at 7 o'clock in the morning and be like, why were you not on the 5 a.m. train? The 5 a.m. train? That's crazy time to go into work. So it's about work, and one of the reasons I really like this story is because Gregor's relationship to his boss and his company and to money is a metaphor for our own relationship to work and money and family. And so people go, this is bizarre. This story makes no sense. They don't even explain how he got turned into a bug. His reaction to the situation is really weird. This is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. I think it does make sense, actually. If you think about it like a dream, he got turned into a giant bug. Fine. But when you look at the rest of the story, I actually feel like this is a very similar to how most employees relate to their bosses. They feel like they can be fired at any moment. They feel like if they do anything even a little bit wrong, they're going to get fired. They're going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their health insurance, if they even have health insurance. And so I feel like a lot of the discussion about work in this story, if you dismiss it as a dream or psychosis or drugs, you will never see these connections. But if you accept it as a sort of dream-like metaphor, then you will be able to see that the conversations about work are very, back when he wrote this story, in Prague, are very similar to the work concerns that people have today. All right. So I think the situation, the relationship between him and his boss is like a metaphor for our relationship to our bosses. We're not bugs, but boy, they kind of treat us like fucking bugs sometimes. Not me. I mean, I have a really nice job, but I get a lot of freedom and power because I'm a professor. But like they treat a lot of your other professors. I have a good position, but a lot of your other professors do not have a good position. They're part-time employees, and sometimes it feels like bosses treat employees like bugs, like they don't even care about you. Okay, let's take a look at some of this other stuff. Oh, I love the detail that the father is like, let your boss in your room. I'm sure he will forgive your room being messy. Like, holy shit! I love the idea that Gregor, like the guilt that he feels is like so that it's like a metaphor for guilt. But like, can you like not only is your boss mad at you for not showing up to work, your boss is mad that you didn't clean your room. Like, and again, it's an exaggeration, but like, I'm sure you have experienced things like this, where your professors will, for example, look down on you because you have a crack in your iPhone or something. You know what I mean? Um, and it's like, what the fuck does that have to do with you? Shut the fuck up. Um, okay, another little detail about work. His mother, about down on page 3. I'm over here on page 3 now. His mother says, she tries to stand up for her son and says, the lad only ever thinks about business. He nearly makes me cross the way he never goes out in the evenings. He's been in town for a week and he just stayed home every evening. He sits with us in the kitchen and just reads the paper or studies train timetables. His idea of relaxation is working with his fret saw. That's like a little tool to make, like he made the frame. He's made a little frame, for instance. It only took him 2 or 3 evenings. You'd be amazed how nice it is. It's hanging in his room. Again, the incredibly sad details of Gregor Samsa's life. He has no friends to go out with when he comes home, so he stays home. What does he do with his free time at home? Well, for 2 or 3 days, he made a wooden frame for a pretty girl he saw in a magazine. Um, but even worse, what does he do with his free time? He studies train timetables, meaning he's got to figure out what time the train leaves and how he can transfer to a different train to get over here. He's planning out work when he's at home. So he works when he's at work, and then when he comes home, he also works. America's a lot like that, isn't it? We just work constantly. We work all the time. We never. Gregor works for 15 years. He's never had a sick day. Um, and the bosses are immediately suspicious when he comes in late instead of coming in. He hasn't come in at 7 a.m. and he was supposed to come in at 5 a.m. and they show up at his house. So like this is an incredibly sad picture of people who work all the time. And I'm sure many of you guys probably work way too much and you have to go to school. And I'm sure you know people like this who just work, work, work all the time. They don't have any friends, they don't have any free time. And if they had free time, they wouldn't know what to do with it. Because if you just work for 15 years and then when you come home, you study tables and you're still working, even if you had a free night, you wouldn't know what to do with it. You don't have any friends. You don't have any hobbies or interests. The best idea you got is cutting a picture of a girl out of a magazine and hanging it up on the wall in a frame. Like, that is really heartbreakingly sad. But it's also realistic. I think that is what people are like a lot. And I think that's why I like this story, is because for all of its weirdness about Gregor being turned into a giant bug, um, once you accept that part of the story, it has a lot to say about modern day America, where people aren't bugs, but businesses tend to treat you like a little bug, and if you screw up, they will fucking squash you. Um, okay, let me grab something else here. So he says, the clerk says to him, we people in, I'm at the bottom of page 3, we people in commerce, if we people in commerce, meaning in business, if business people ever become slightly unwell, then fortunately or unfortunately, as you like, we simply have to overcome it in the name of business considerations. Holy fuck. Like, for starters, that's incredibly sad and disturbing. But also, that's incredibly accurate. This idea that you are not allowed to be sick because there's business to do, there's work to do, and you can't be sick. No one is allowed to get sick. And I don't think it was so dramatic during COVID that the way to solve COVID was to pay everybody to stay home and not go into work. But American businesses were like, oh, no, 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 no. We need to make money every day, all the time, which means people need to come into work and do their jobs no matter what because we refuse to lose money. Landlords were, what we needed to do is we needed to cancel rent so that people would stay home from work and stop spreading the disease. But they didn't do that because they feel like work has to happen all the time. There's no reason not to do work. Maybe you get a little sick, but that doesn't mean business can stop. It doesn't mean work can stop. And then they make you work from home when you're sick. Or when there's a pandemic, everybody's working from home, or they got to go into work anyway. So, I mean, the story is not bizarre. The story is kind of amazingly accurate. See you in the next video.